Beloved, hear me carefully. Every year does not start the same way, and every destiny does not move at the same speed. There are people who labor all through the year, yet never recover from how they started. Others seem to experience help, speed, and favor without explanation. The difference is not luck. The difference is understanding the mystery of beginnings. If you miss what God is doing in the first month, you may spend the remaining 11 months trying to repair what alignment would have settled in days. This is why tonight's message is not motivational. It is directional. What you are about to hear has the potential to reorder your year, rescue wasted efforts, and provoke miracles that look too early to be normal. I urge you, do not disconnect. What you catch in this moment can decide what chases you for the rest of 2026. The law of beginnings reveals a spiritual principle that governs how God relates with time, seasons, and destinies. In the realm of the spirit, the start of a thing is never neutral. It is loaded with authority and prophetic weight. What happens at the beginning speaks into the future, giving it direction, strength, or resistance. This is why God repeatedly demanded the first in Scripture, the firstborn, the first fruit, the first day, because beginnings have the power to represent the whole. When the beginning is claimed, the remainder responds accordingly. Many people underestimate the power of how they start, assuming that effort later can compensate for disorder early. But in spiritual realities, correction is harder than alignment. The first month of a year functions like a spiritual womb where patterns are formed. Thoughts conceived here grow into habits. Habits mature into character, and character determines outcomes. This is why two people can pray the same prayers and exert similar efforts, yet experience drastically different results. One aligned the beginning. The other tried to repair the journey midway. Beginnings speak to systems, spiritual, psychological, and even physical, telling them how to behave for the rest of the cycle. When disorder is permitted early, it trains resistance into the system, making progress unnecessarily difficult. God's insistence on honoring beginnings is not for his benefit. It is for the preservation of destiny. When God is acknowledged early, he supplies structure, clarity, and protection. When he is ignored early, even sincere prayers later struggle to override the spiritual laws already activated. This is why some people feel like they are always catching up, always repairing, always restarting. It is not that God is absent. It is that the foundation was never established. The first month carries unusual sensitivity in the spirit. Instructions given at this time are not suggestions. They are frameworks. Decisions made here echo loudly. Spiritual laziness at the beginning becomes spiritual fatigue later. Discipline embraced early becomes ease later. God, in his mercy, allows seasons to repeat, but wisdom learns early and saves time. Destiny is too valuable to be left to chance, and beginnings are too powerful to be treated casually. When a person understands the law of beginnings, they stop rushing results and start securing alignment. They become intentional with prayer, consecration, and focus, knowing that what they establish now will either fight for them or fight against them. This understanding separates those who experience sustained progress from those who only experience temporary excitement, and it explains why divine acceleration often follows those who honor God at the very start of a matter. Alignment before achievement is a governing truth in the kingdom that many ignore at their own peril. In a world obsessed with results, speed, and visible success, God emphasizes order, posture, and positioning. He is not impressed by motion. He responds to alignment. You can be busy and still be dislocated. You can be prayerful and still be out of order. Achievement without alignment may produce applause, but it will lack longevity, peace, and divine backing. This is why many people arrive at places God never sent them to and then ask him to bless what he never authorized. Alignment is the act of placing your life, values, decisions, and direction in agreement with God's will and methods. Before God releases power, he checks position. Before he grants increase, he inspects order. In Scripture, whenever God intended to do something significant, the first instruction was never go and achieve. It was come and align. Noah aligned with divine instructions before rain ever fell. Moses aligned with God's pattern before the Red Sea responded. Alignment is what gives legitimacy to action. The tragedy of many destinies is not lack of effort, but wrong order. People pursue money before purpose, platforms before process, visibility before credibility. When order is wrong, even blessings become burdens. What you are not aligned for will eventually crush you, no matter how desperately you prayed for it. God in His mercy withholds certain achievements, not as punishment, but as protection, because misaligned success is more dangerous than delay. The first month of a year is a sacred opportunity for alignment. It is the season where God calls people to pause, reflect, correct, and reorder. It is not a time for rushing into activity. It is a time for recalibration. Alignment requires honesty, the courage to confront wrong priorities, unhealthy patterns, and misplaced loyalties. It demands surrender, because alignment means God decides direction, pace, and method. Until alignment is restored, achievement will always require excessive energy. When alignment is in place, achievement becomes natural. Grace replaces strain. Favor replaces manipulation. Help replaces isolation. Things begin to respond because you are standing where heaven can recognize you. Alignment positions you under divine supply lines, where effort is multiplied and resistance is reduced. This is why two people can engage the same opportunities and one advances effortlessly while the other struggles endlessly. God is not trying to slow people down. He is trying to save them from unnecessary pain. Alignment may feel like delay, but it is actually acceleration disguised as preparation. Those who rush ahead without alignment may arrive early, but they will arrive empty. Those who submit to divine order may seem slow, but when they move, creation cooperates, systems align, and destiny unfolds with precision. Because alignment has already settled the question of direction, authority, and sustainability long before achievement ever comes into view. The power of spiritual primacy is rooted in the truth that whatever takes the first position in your life eventually takes control. In the spirit realm, first does not only mean earliest in time, it means highest in authority. What you honor first becomes the reference point from which other things draw meaning and balance. This is why God consistently demands the first. Not because He is insecure, but because He understands that the order of priority determines the flow of power. When God is first, nothing else needs to struggle for relevance because everything else falls into place. Spiritual primacy teaches that life responds to hierarchy. When you wake up in the morning, the first voice you listen to, the first thought you entertain, the first instruction you obey, all begin to shape the direction of your day. On a larger scale, the first month of the year functions the same way. It is the month that teaches the remaining months how to behave. If God is consulted first, the year learns submission. If God is ignored first, the year learns resistance. Many people want God involved, but they do not want Him first, and this contradiction weakens spiritual authority. There is a difference between involving God and enthroning God. Involvement makes Him an option, primacy makes Him Lord. When God only receives leftovers, leftover time, leftover energy, leftover attention, the life may be religious, but it will lack power. Spiritual primacy demands intentionality. It is a deliberate choice to say that before plans, ambitions, and pursuits are finalized, God must speak. This posture is what turns ordinary efforts into covenant-backed outcomes. The tragedy of misplaced priority is subtle. Nothing may seem wrong at first. Progress may even appear visible. But over time, imbalance begins to show. Strength is drained, clarity fades, and frustration increases. This is because whatever is not first will eventually compete for control, and competition always produces conflict. When God is not first, other things will attempt to take His place. Career, relationships, money, comfort. And they are poor masters. They demand more and give less, leaving the soul restless even when achievements increase. Spiritual primacy is not proven by words but by choices. It is revealed in how time is allocated, how decisions are made, and how quickly obedience follows instruction. In the first month, God watches carefully what receives priority, because that becomes the template for the year. When prayer becomes first, direction becomes clear. When obedience becomes first, resistance reduces. When seeking God becomes first, seeking help becomes unnecessary, because help begins to seek you. Those who understand spiritual primacy do not negotiate with divine instruction. They understand that delay weakens authority, and partial obedience rearranges priorities. They know that what is placed first carries the grace to sustain everything else. When God is honored first, he takes personal responsibility for outcomes, ordering events, influencing systems, and preserving peace in ways that human effort cannot replicate, establishing a spiritual advantage that quietly governs the journey ahead. The prophetic gates of the first month reveal that time is not empty and seasons are not passive. In the spirit realm, periods are assigned permissions, and certain moments carry access that others do not. The beginning of a year is one of those moments where heaven opens systems of instruction, correction, and authorization. It is not every time that God speaks with equal intensity. There are seasons when his voice carries greater consequence, and the first month is one of them. What is discerned and acted upon early can save a person years of struggle. A gate represents access and transition. When a gate is open, movement is easy. When it closes, force becomes necessary. The first month is a gate that allows destinies to cross into new dimensions with less resistance. This is why spiritual sensitivity matters at the start of a year. God often speaks quietly, but his instructions are weighty. Many miss these instructions because they are distracted by excitement, celebrations, or pressure to act quickly. They move before listening. And by the time they realize direction was needed, the gate has already narrowed. Prophetic gates are not only about blessings, they are also about alignment and warning. God uses the first month to reveal patterns that must end and paths that must change. He exposes relationships that will become distractions, habits that will cause delay, and decisions that will produce regret if continued. Ignoring these revelations does not cancel their truth. It only tones the consequences. The mercy of God is seen in how early he speaks, but wisdom is proven in how quickly one responds. The spirit realm responds strongly to early obedience. Instructions acted upon in the first month often yield disproportionate results. A single decision, prayer posture, or sacrifice made early can unlock favor that runs through the entire year. This is why some people experience speed that cannot be explained logically. They did not do more, they responded earlier. Timing multiplies effort, and obedience at the gate produces momentum on the journey. Disobedience at prophetic gates is costly, not because God is angry, but because access is time-bound. Some doors are not locked, they are seasonal. When the season passes, the same prayer requires more labor. This is why spiritual laziness at the beginning often turns into spiritual warfare later. What could have been settled with alignment now demands endurance. God still helps, but the advantage of ease is lost. The first month trains the rest of the year how to respond to you. When you engage God early, spiritual systems recognize authority. When you delay response, resistance is normalized. This is why people who pray fervently later sometimes feel unheard. It is not silence, it is protocol. Gates respond to timing. The wise do not rush activity in the first month. They prioritize hearing. They ask questions before making declarations. They seek clarity before seeking speed. In doing so, they step through prophetic gates with understanding, carrying direction instead of confusion, authorization instead of assumption, and discernment instead of regret. Covenantal blessings activated early operate on the principle that God responds not only to obedience, but to timely obedience. In the kingdom, there are blessings that are not delayed because of sin or disobedience, but because of poor timing. God attaches certain rewards to seasons, and when those seasons are missed, the blessing does not disappear, but it becomes harder to access. The first month of a year is one of the most strategic seasons where covenant is tested, not by grand gestures, but by sensitivity and response. A covenant is a binding agreement governed by terms. God's part is faithfulness, man's part is obedience. However, obedience has a clock. When God gives instructions early and they are honored early, it activates covenantal systems that begin to work quietly and consistently in the background of a person's life. This is why some individuals experience favor they did not pray loudly for, and help they did not announce publicly. Their obedience was early, and the covenant responded ahead of time. Early obedience demonstrates trust. It tells God that His word carries more weight than pressure, fear, or convenience. When God sees this posture, He commits Himself to outcomes. Scripture repeatedly shows that God moves swiftly when people respond promptly. Delayed obedience may still be obedience, but it loses the advantage of momentum. In covenant dealings, speed matters because timing preserves ease. What is obeyed early often requires less effort to sustain later. The first month is when God observes what truly governs a person's decisions. It is easy to obey when results are visible, but covenantal blessings respond to obedience before evidence appears. This is why sacrifices, consecration, discipline, and alignment in the first month carry unusual power. They speak louder than words. They announce to the spirit realm that this life is governed by covenant, not convenience. When that announcement is made early, systems begin to rearrange themselves to support destiny. Many people unknowingly sabotage covenantal blessings by postponing spiritual responsibilities. Prayer is delayed, instructions are negotiated, sacrifices are reduced, and focus is divided. Nothing looks wrong immediately, but over time, the year begins to resist them. They pray more, fast longer, and try harder, not realizing that the ease they are looking for was tied to early obedience. Covenant blessings do not always shout. They often whisper through consistency and advantage. God is deeply committed to covenant because covenant removes uncertainty. When He sees a person respond early, He knows He can trust them with increase. Early obedience tells God that if He releases more, it will not become a distraction. This is why some prayers are answered later than expected, not because God is unwilling, but because He is waiting for proof of alignment that guarantees preservation. Increase without covenant consciousness leads to loss. When covenantal blessings are activated early, they manifest as protection from errors, discernment in decisions, favor in unseen places, and strength in moments of pressure. The individual may not always recognize these benefits immediately, but over time the difference becomes undeniable. Others struggle where they advance, others delay where they move smoothly, others panic where they remain calm. These are not accidents, they are covenantal outcomes set in motion early. God does not rush people, but He honors readiness. The first month provides an opportunity to show readiness through obedience, honor, and submission. Those who understand this do not wait for the year to demand seriousness from them. They treat the beginning as sacred, knowing that what is activated early will speak consistently, quietly shaping outcomes long before challenges appear. Preserving the blessing of the beginning requires understanding that spiritual experiences are not self-sustaining. They must be guarded intentionally. Many people encounter God powerfully at the start of a season and receive clarity, direction, and even breakthroughs, but gradually lose the advantage because they assume that what was received will continue automatically. In the kingdom, what is not maintained will eventually diminish. The blessing of the first month is a seed, not a conclusion, and seeds demand stewardship if they are to become harvests. Spiritual preservation begins with consistency. What you practice passionately at the beginning must be practiced faithfully as the journey continues. Prayer that was intense in the first month must become disciplined afterward. Focus that was sharp must be protected from distraction. When spiritual habits are abandoned after initial excitement, momentum is lost and the year begins to drift. Drift is dangerous because it is subtle. People People do not fall suddenly. They gradually move away from alignment without noticing until resistance increases. Distraction is one of the greatest enemies of preservation. Life becomes busy, responsibilities multiply, and urgency fades. Nothing appears wrong outwardly, but inwardly, sensitivity begins to dull. The voice that was once clear becomes faint, not because God stopped speaking, but because attention shifted. Preservation requires deliberate withdrawal from noise, a refusal to allow lesser things compete with what God established early. What is not defended will be replaced. Compromise also erodes the blessing of the beginning. Small disobediences, justified shortcuts, and neglected instructions weaken spiritual authority. Preservation demands integrity, doing what is right even when it is inconvenient and unseen. The enemy rarely attacks directly after a strong beginning. He waits for familiarity to breed carelessness. When reverence fades, power diminishes. This is why the greatest victories are often followed by the greatest temptations. Preserving the blessing also requires remembrance. People lose advantage when they forget what God said, what was instructed, and what was demanded at the beginning. Writing down instructions, revisiting revelations, and praying through them keeps the heart aligned. Forgetfulness leads to deviation, and deviation invites resistance. What God reveals early must be revisited often, not as nostalgia but as guidance. Accountability strengthens preservation. Isolation weakens it. When people walk alone, self-deception becomes easier. God often uses spiritual relationships to keep people aligned with what He started in them. Correction, encouragement, and reinforcement help maintain direction. Preservation is not about perfection, it is about responsiveness. When adjustments are made quickly, damage is minimized. The blessing of the beginning was never meant to impress, it was meant to empower. It gives momentum, clarity, and authority, but it expects stewardship. Those who preserve it experience steady progress rather than dramatic highs and lows. Their year does not depend on emergency prayers because structure was established early and maintained faithfully. Spiritual longevity is the reward of those who treat beginnings with honor and continuance with discipline, allowing what God released at the start to quietly govern every step that follows without loss, dilution, or regret. Beloved, as we come to the end of this charge, it must be clear that a year is not conquered by chance, nor is destiny secured by enthusiasm alone. Time responds to understanding, and seasons yield to those who discern their spiritual significance. The first month is not merely an entry point into the year. It is a divine opportunity to legislate outcomes, establish order, and provoke advantage. What is handled casually at the beginning will demand great effort later, but what is honored early will speak consistently throughout the journey. We have seen that beginnings carry authority. Alignment precedes achievement. Priority determines control. Seasons open prophetic gates. Covenant responds to early obedience, and blessings must be preserved intentionally. These are not abstract ideas, they are spiritual laws that govern progress. When these principles are ignored, people struggle sincerely yet unnecessarily. When they are applied, grace replaces strain, clarity replaces confusion, and momentum replaces stagnation. God is not unfair, He is orderly, and He rewards those who cooperate with His order. The tragedy of many years is not adversity but misalignment. People pray for rescue when structure would have produced rest. They fast for speed when early obedience would have produced ease. But mercy is still available and wisdom is being released now. The first month stands as an altar where destinies can be reset, patterns corrected, and authority restored. It is God's invitation to start rightly so that progress can be sustained. As you step into the remaining days of this year, do not rush activity at the expense of alignment. Guard what God has spoken. Honor Him first. Respond quickly. Preserve what He releases. Let discipline outlive excitement, and let obedience outlast emotion. When these are in place, the year will not work against you. It will cooperate with you. May the God who orders seasons establish you early, strengthen you consistently, and cause the blessings of the beginning to speak louder than the challenges of the journey, so that when the year ends, your testimony will not be that you survived, but that you were guided, helped, preserved, and multiplied, because you understood the power of the beginning and honored it with wisdom and obedience.